7:14 in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The United States destroyer Carney was already under a sudden and impossible radar track. This was not a routine encounter. A ballistic missile had been launched from the Iranian coast, but it was not climbing toward the stars. It was hugging the water at 5 times the speed of sound. The question for the crew was simple. How do you stop a weapon that refuses to follow the laws of physics? The morning sun was a pale disk over the horizon. The water was a flat sheet of deep blue. Around the ship, the air was still and humid. The Carney moved slowly through the swells. It was a billion-dollar machine designed for the high-altitude defense of the fleet. Now, it was being hunted by something that stayed below the shield. Inside the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere shifted in a second. The lights were low. Blue and amber glowed from the consoles. The tactical action officer stared at his screen. His jaw tightened as he watched the data refresh. The technician spoke first. "Sir, contact is designated Vampire 1. The officer responded. "Confirm the altitude." The technician checked the data. Altitude is 50 meters. Speed is Mach 5.2. The officer leaned forward. "That is impossible. Ballistic missiles do not fly at 50 meters. "Sir, the track is solid. We have a direct line of sight." The officer hit the internal communications. "All hands to general quarters. This is not a drill." 600 miles away, analysts at the Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar saw the same signal. Their screens showed a single red dot moving across the Gulf. It was moving too fast for a cruise missile. It was too low for a ballistic missile. It was a flat line. On the Iranian coast, near Bandar Ajask, a mobile launcher sat in the shadow of a cliff. Heat shimmered from its empty rail. The crew moved with frantic, practiced precision. They were already packing up to move. This was a test of a modified Fateh 313 missile. It was designed for a flat trajectory. It was designed to prove that the American Aegis system had a blind spot. The Iranian commander watched the telemetry on a rugged tablet. He did not want a war. He wanted to show that he could start one at any time. His heart hammered against his ribs. He knew the Americans would see it. He also knew they only had 60 seconds to decide what it was. Back on the Carney, the alarms began to scream. It was a high, piercing sound that cut through the ship. Sailors ran through the narrow corridors. Heavy steel doors were slammed and locked. The captain entered the Combat Information Center. He did not look at the screens. He looked at his tactical action officer. The captain asked, "Time to impact?" The officer looked up. 45 seconds. "We have no solution for a ballistic target this low." The captain nodded once. "Then we make one. Activate the close-in weapon system. Prepare the standard missiles for a surface-to-surface intercept." The ship began to heel over as it entered a hard turn. The engines roared. Black smoke poured from the stacks. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 7:15 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the USS Carney. The radar screens flickered. The target was unstable. It was on the edge of the radar horizon. Every time the ship rolled in the swells, the contact vanished. Then it reappeared. It was closer. It was faster. The weapons control officer spoke. "Captain, we cannot maintain a constant track. The sea return is too high. The missile is masking itself in the wave tops." The captain stood behind the console. He did not move. "Force the radar into high power. Give me a burn through. We need a firing solution now." The technician adjusted the dials. "I am trying. Still nothing. It is moving too fast for the standard filters." Outside on the deck, the forward 5-inch gun mount began to move. It swung toward the horizon. It looked like a finger pointing at a ghost. The gun was slave to the radar. It searched for a target that was barely there. In the Gulf of Oman, 30 miles away, an MH-60 Seahawk helicopter was on a routine flight. The pilot looked out his side window. He saw something. The pilot spoke into his radio. "Guardian 1 to Carney. Do you see that?" The controller on the ship responded immediately. "Guardian 1, state your contact." "Carney, we have a visual. Low altitude, high speed. It looks like a white streak on the water. It is heading straight for your position." "Copy, Guardian 1. We are tracking." Stay clear of the engagement zone. The pilot banked the helicopter hard. Confirm. We are breaking north. That thing is moving like nothing I have ever seen. On the Iranian coast, the atmosphere was different. It was cold and clinical. The commander stood inside a darkened mobile command van. He watched a white line on his screen. It was a telemetry feed from the missile itself. The technician looked at the commander. The seeker is active. It has found the target. The commander did not smile. It was supposed to pass the ship 500 meters to the south. Why is it on a collision course? The technician checked his keyboard. The guidance system is not responding to the override. The flat trajectory has caused a sensor error. It is locked on the largest radar signature in the area. The commander felt a chill. The largest signature is the Carney. Yes, the missile is no longer a test. It is an attack. The commander reached for the secure phone. He needed to call his superiors, but he knew it was too late. The missile was traveling at nearly 2,000 meters per second. The decision was no longer his. On the Carney, the tactical action officer shouted, "I have a solid lock. 30 seconds to impact." The captain took the handset. "This is the captain. Batteries release. Engage the inbound. I repeat, engage." 2 standard missile. 2 interceptors erupted from the forward deck. They rose on pillars of white smoke. They turned sharply toward the horizon. The ship shook under the force of the launch. The interceptors accelerated. They were hunting a target that was almost under them. The crew held their breath. They watched 2 green dots move toward the red one on the screen. The first interceptor reached the intercept point. A small cloud appeared on the radar. The second interceptor followed. The technician looked up. His face was pale. Negative hit. Both interceptors missed the target. The missile passed under them. The red dot was still there. It was 10 miles away. It would be at the ship in 9 seconds. 7:16 in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The miss was a psychological blow to the Combat Information Center. 2 interceptors had gone active. 2 interceptors had failed. The atmosphere in the room turned from high tension to a cold, clinical focus. There was no time for fear. There was only time for the next system in the layer. The tactical action officer spoke loudly over the hum of the cooling fans. Interceptors neutralized. Target is inside the inner defense zone. 5 miles and closing. The captain stood behind the radar console. His voice was flat. Engage with the 5-inch gun. Program for airburst at 3 miles. Switch the close-in weapon system to automatic. On the forward deck, the large gun turret snapped into a new position. It began to fire. Each shot was a thunderclap that shook the hull. 5-inch shells screamed toward the horizon. They were programmed to explode in a wall of tungsten fragments. The goal was to create a lead curtain that the missile could not pass. Below the deck, the ship was a hive of controlled motion. In the engine room, the heat was rising. The Carney was pushing its turbines to the limit. The ship leaned 10 degrees to the left as the helmsman executed a zigzag maneuver. It was a desperate attempt to throw off the missile seeker. Inside the Iranian command van, the silence was absolute. The commander watched the telemetry. He saw the American interceptors miss. He saw the Carney begin to fight back with its guns. On his screen, the white line was almost touching the blue icon of the ship. The technician whispered, "The Americans are using terminal defenses. Their gunfire is creating a massive debris field." The commander did not blink. It will not matter. The missile is traveling too fast. Even if they hit the engine, the kinetic energy alone will carry the airframe into the hull. It is a 4-ton bullet. The technician looked at the clock. Impact in 6 seconds. The commander felt a wave of nausea. He had spent his career preparing for this. Now that it was happening, he realized the scale of the disaster. If that ship burned, the horizon would soon be filled with American bombers. There would be no explanation that could stop what was coming. Back on the Carney, the sound changed. The slow, rhythmic thud of the 5-inch gun stopped. It was replaced by a sound like a giant piece of fabric being torn apart. The close-in weapon system had gone active. The radar-controlled Gatling gun on the side of the ship was firing 4,000 rounds per minute. A stream of red tracers reached out into the morning mist. The gun was tracking the missile at speeds the human eye could not follow. The vibration was so intense that light bulbs in the hallways began to shatter. The weapons control officer stared at the monitor. Target is at 2,000 meters. CIWS has a track. It is firing. The captain gripped the edge of the console. Hold the turn. Keep the guns on target. The screen was a blur of digital noise. The sea spray and the smoke from the guns created a wall of white. Somewhere inside that wall, a piece of Iranian steel was screaming toward them at Mach 5. The officer counted down. 4, 3, 2. The world outside the ship turned orange. A massive pressure wave hit the bridge windows. The glass groaned but did not break. The sound was a low, heavy boom that drowned out the engines and the alarms. The captain braced himself. Report. Did we take a hit? 7:17 in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The shock wave from the explosion rolled over the deck of the USS Carney. It was a physical weight. It rattled the bulkheads and threw sailors against the walls. For 3 seconds, the Combat Information Center was a chaos of falling clipboards and flickering monitors. Then, the silence of professional focus returned. The tactical action officer was the first to speak. Vampire 1 is off the glass. I repeat, the track is gone. The captain wiped a layer of dust from his console. Check the hull. I want a damage report now. A voice came over the internal speaker. It was the damage control officer. Bridge. Damage control. We have no hull penetrations. We have multiple fragment hits on the forward superstructure. The SPY radar array is degraded, but operational. No casualties. The captain let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The guns did their job. That was too close. 200 miles away, the atmosphere was much colder. Inside the Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar, the air was thick with the hum of servers. High-ranking officers stood around a glass table that projected a live map of the Persian Gulf. They had watched the entire engagement in real time, via satellite. A colonel looked at the commanding general. Sir, the Carney was targeted and engaged. The Iranians just took a shot at a United States destroyer. The general did not look away from the map. Did it hit? Negative. Terminal defenses destroyed the inbound at less than 500 meters. But the intent was clear. The general turned to a communications officer. Get me the White House on the secure line. And get the carrier strike group on the horn. I want F-18 Super Hornets in the air over Bandar Ejask in 10 minutes. We are moving to a retaliatory posture. The colonel hesitated. Sir, the rules of engagement require us to confirm the origin and intent before we strike back. The general's voice hardened. The origin was an Iranian missile battery. The intent was the destruction of an American ship. The rules of engagement are satisfied. We do not wait for a second shot. Back on the Carney, the captain was thinking the same thing. He walked to the window of the bridge. The air outside was filled with the smell of burnt cordite. A black smudge of smoke hung on the horizon where the missile had died. The tactical action officer called out from the darkness. Captain, we have new activity. Our sensors are picking up multiple Iranian fast attack craft launching from the coast. They are heading our way. The captain looked at the radar repeater. 6 red dots were moving at 40 knots. They were spread out in a swarm pattern. It was a classic ambush. The missile was the lead. The boats were the follow-up. The captain picked up the radio. This is the captain. All stations. We are not done. Prepare for surface engagement. Target the lead boats with the 5-inch gun. Do not wait for them to close the distance. The ship began to vibrate again. The engines were pushing for maximum speed. The Carney was no longer just defending itself. It was preparing to fight its way out of a trap. 7:17 and 30 seconds in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The ocean surface was no longer empty. 6 Iranian fast attack craft were carving white scars across the blue water. They moved in a staggered formation. They were small and made of fiberglass. This made them difficult for the radar to keep a steady lock. To the crew of the Carney, they looked like predatory insects skimming the waves. The tactical action officer called out the ranges. Lead boat at 4,000 meters. Closing at 42 knots. They are splitting into 2 groups of 3. They are trying to flank us. The captain stood at the starboard bridge wing. He could see the spray from their bows through his binoculars. Engage the lead group with the 5-inch gun. Use the 25mm chain guns for the secondary group. Do not let them get within torpedo range. The ship shook as the main gun resumed firing. This time, the shells were hitting the water. Giant geysers of white foam erupted around the Iranian boats. The Carney was a heavyweight boxer trying to hit a dozen bees. The vibration of the engines was a deep, rhythmic thud that the crew felt in their teeth. Inside the Iranian command van, the commander was shouting into a radio. His face was slick with sweat. The air conditioning in the small trailer had failed. Abort. I repeat, all units abort. The test is over. Break contact immediately. A voice crackled back through the static. It was the leader of the boat swarm. Negative. We saw the explosion. The American ship is damaged. We are moving in to board or finish the strike. This is our order. The commander slammed his fist against the metal desk. Whose order? I am the sector commander. Return to base. There was no reply. Only the sound of the ocean and the distant roar of engines. The commander looked at his technician. They are not listening. They think this is the start of the war. They think the missile was the signal. The technician pointed to a second screen. Sir, we have more trouble. Radar at the Bandar Aegis airfield is picking up a massive signature. It is coming from the south, from the open ocean. The commander stared at the data. His heart sank. The Americans have launched their strike package. 7:18 in the morning. 200 miles to the south. The deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln was a scene of controlled fury. 4 F-18 Super Hornets were screaming down the catapults. The steam from the launches rose in thick clouds, momentarily obscuring the yellow-shirted flight deck crew. The jets were loaded with laser-guided bombs and anti-ship missiles. The lead pilot spoke as his wheels left the deck. Raven 1-1 is airborne. Heading 030. Weapon systems are hot. The carrier air wing commander responded from the ship. Raven 1-1. You are cleared to the coast. Your objective is the missile battery at Bandar Aegis. If the Carney takes another hit, you are cleared to glass the site. Do you copy? Copy. We are at full afterburner. Time to target is 6 minutes. On the Carney, the situation was reaching a breaking point. The 5-inch gun had clipped one of the fast boats. It was dead in the water and burning, but the other 5 were still coming. They were now within 2,000 meters. The bridge was filled with the smell of ozone and hot metal. The tactical action officer turned to the captain. Sir, the boats are uncovering their launchers. They are preparing to fire shoulder-mounted missiles. The captain gripped the rail. He looked at the horizon. He could see the smoke trails of the Iranian boats. He could also see the distant specks of the American fighters arriving from the south. The entire region was a powder keg. One more spark would blow the Middle East apart. The captain made his decision. Load the canisters with non-lethal flash rounds. I want a warning shot directly over their bows. If they do not turn, in 30 seconds, we sink everything in the water. The gun rotated. The loader hissed. The world held its breath for 30 seconds. 7:18 and 50 seconds in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The flash rounds exploded. The sky above the Iranian boats turned a blinding white. The sound was a sharp crack that echoed off the hull of the Carney. It was a final warning. The American ship was giving the swarm a choice: turn away or die. The lead Iranian boat did not turn. The pilot was young. He was caught in the adrenaline of the moment. He saw the smoke from the Carney. He saw the damage to the superstructure. He believed the Americans were vulnerable. He squeezed the trigger on a shoulder-fired missile launcher. A streak of gray smoke climbed from the deck of the fiberglass boat. It was a heat-seeking missile. It was small. It was not a ship killer, but it was an act of war. The captain on the bridge saw the launch. He did not hesitate. Batteries release. Neutralize the threats. All of them. The 25mm chain guns on the Carney began to bark. It was a heavy, rhythmic, terrifying sound. The rounds hit the water around the lead boat. Then, they walked onto the target. The fiberglass hull disintegrated under the high explosive shells. The boat disappeared in a spray of splinters and fuel. 7:19 in the morning, 3 miles above the coast of Iran. Raven 11 banked his F-18 into a steep dive. His cockpit was filled with the green glow of the heads-up display. He had a solid laser lock on the mobile missile launcher near Bandar Ejask. The targeting reticle was steady. The pilot spoke into his mask. Raven 11 has a hot lock. I am 5 seconds from weapons release. I am waiting for the word. The general in Qatar stood at the glass table. The room was silent. Every eye was on the red icon of the Iranian battery. If he said the word, the missiles would fly. If the missiles flew, the Iranian Air Force would scramble. Within an hour, the entire Gulf would be a combat zone. The general gripped the edge of the table. Hold, do not fire, wait for my command. The pilot's voice was tense. Sir, they are reloading the rail. If they fire again, the Carney might not survive. I need to take the shot now. Inside the Iranian command van, the commander saw the American jets on his radar. He knew what they were doing. He knew his life was measured in seconds. He grabbed a rifle from the rack on the wall. He kicked open the door of the van and ran toward the missile crew. The commander shouted at the top of his lungs, "Stop! Get away from the launcher! That is an order!" The crew ignored him. They were focused on the next missile. They were part of a different chain of command. The commander did not stop. He fired a burst from his rifle into the air. The technicians froze. They looked at him in shock. 7, 19, and 40 seconds in the morning. On the Carney, the chain guns were still firing. A second Iranian boat was burning. The remaining 3 were breaking formation. They were turning hard to the north. They had seen enough. The water was filled with debris and black smoke. The tactical action officer screamed, "Captain, I have a new contact. High altitude. Coming from the north. Extreme high speed." The captain turned to the radar. Another missile? Negative. It is too large for a missile. It is descending at Mach 7. It is coming straight down on our position. The room went cold. This was not a boat. This was not a coastal missile. This was something else. The sensors on the ship began to fail. The screens turned to static. The lights flickered and died. The roar of the engines faded into a strange, high-pitched hum. The pilot of Raven 11 shouted into his radio, "Control, I have lost my flight computers. I am manual. I have lost the target. What is happening?" The world outside the bridge windows of the Carney turned a deep, shimmering purple. The water stopped moving. The wind died. Every sailor on the deck felt the hair on their arms stand up. The silence was absolute. 7:19 and 50 seconds in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The object did not hit the Carney. It did not hit the water. It vanished from the radar screens 300 meters above the surface. A massive pulse of energy rippled through the air. The purple shimmer was a side effect of ionized gas. The atmosphere itself had been torn apart by the speed of the object. On the bridge of the Carney, the captain held on to the command chair. The lights came back on, one by one. The hum of the electronics returned to a normal pitch. The tactical action officer was gasping for air. Contact is gone. It just ceased to exist. I have no debris, no splash. The captain looked at the damage control board. Status of the ship. Sir, everything is green. The systems just rebooted. It was like a massive static discharge. The weapons control officer looked at his screen. He froze. Captain, look at the camera feed from the forward deck. The captain looked. On the gray steel of the deck, just in front of the 5-inch gun, there was a hole. It was perfectly circular. It was 10 centimeters wide. It went straight through the armored plating. Damage control. Report on the forward deck. The voice came back. It sounded shaken. Sir, we have a through-and-through puncture. It missed the magazine by 2 meters. It went through the hull and out the bottom of the ship. We are taking on water, but the pumps can handle it. The captain realized what had happened. The Mach 7 object was a kinetic slug, a solid piece of tungsten. It had no explosives. It did not need them. At that speed, it was a spear of God. It had punched through the destroyer like it was made of paper, and it had done so with surgical precision. Inside the Iranian command van, The commander stared at his screen. His telemetry had cut out, but he saw the visual from a drone. The technician whispered, "It hit." But there was no explosion. The commander leaned back. It was not supposed to hit. It was a guidance test for the terminal phase. The slug is inert. He looked at the American jets on his radar. They were still there. They were circling. They were waiting for the order to kill him. They think we just attacked them with a new weapon. They do not know it was a dummy round. The commander picked up the radio. He switched to the international distress frequency. He knew he was breaking every protocol of his navy, but he also knew it was the only way to stay alive. USS Carney. This is the Iranian commander at Bandar-e-Jazk. Do not fire. I repeat, do not fire. The projectile was a non-explosive test unit. It was a technical failure. We are disengaging all forces. The captain of the Carney heard the voice over the bridge speakers. It was raw. It was desperate. He looked at the hole in his deck. He looked at the burning Iranian boats. The captain picked up the handset. Iranian commander. This is the captain of the Carney. You just put a hole through my ship. Your boats are still in the water. My jets are over your head. There was a long pause. The Iranian voice came back. I know. If you strike, we will fight. But neither of us wants what happens next. Check your damage. You will see. There was no warhead. The captain looked at his tactical action officer. The officer nodded slowly. He is right. If that was a high explosive warhead, we would be at the bottom of the ocean right now. The captain turned to the radio. Raven 1-1. This is Carney. Hold your fire. I repeat, hold your fire. We are assessing the situation. The morning was still. The two sides were inches from the edge. 7:25 in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. Below the forward deck of the Carney. The air was thick with the smell of scorched paint and seawater. A damage control team stood in the narrow passageway of the ammunition handling room. They were looking at a hole that should not have been there. It was a perfect circle, 10 centimeters wide. It cut through a heavy steel beam like a hot needle through wax. The damage control chief touched the edge of the hole with a gloved hand. The metal was still radiating heat. It is a clean pass. No fragmentation, no explosive residue. If this thing had a fuse, we would all be vapor right now. On the bridge, the captain listened to the report. He looked at the tactical action officer. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. The captain spoke into the fleet secondary circuit. All stations, this is the captain. We are transitioning to a defensive posture. Do not engage unless fired upon. I repeat, do not fire. He then switched to the high-level command link. Qatar. This is Carney. We have confirmed the nature of the impact. It was a kinetic slug. Weight is estimated at 50 kilograms. Velocity at impact was Mach 7.2. There was no explosive warhead. I repeat, no warhead. In the Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar, the general stared at the live video feed from the Carney's deck camera. The silence in the room was heavy. The Spear of God had changed the math of the entire engagement. The general turned to the colonel. They were testing a terminal guidance system for a hypersonic glide vehicle. They used a destroyer as the target to see if the seeker could find a moving ship in heavy clutter. The colonel looked at the radar map. They nearly started a war for a data point. Sir, the White House is asking for a target list. They want to know when the Hornets will drop. The general picked up the secure phone. Tell them to stand down. We are not going to be the ones to start a war over a technical error. Not today. But tell the Lincoln to keep those jets on station. I want the Iranians to see them every time they look at the sky. On the Iranian coast, the commander at Bandar-e-Jazk watched his screen. The three remaining fast boats were moving north at high speed. They were retreating toward the safety of the coastal batteries. He saw the American fighters on his radar. They were no longer in a dive. They were circling at 20,000 feet. The commander turned to his technician. The Americans are holding. They have processed the data. They know what the slug was. The technician wiped sweat from his forehead. Does that mean we are safe? The commander shook his head slowly. No. It means they know exactly what we are capable of. We showed them a weapon they cannot intercept. We hit a moving destroyer, with a piece of metal traveling 7 times the speed of sound. We proved the point, but we almost died proving it. The commander looked out the window of the van. The sun was higher now. The mist was burning off. The Gulf looked peaceful, but he knew that beneath the surface, the tension had reached a new, permanent level on the Carney. The crew began the work of plugging the hole. It was a temporary fix, a piece of steel plate welded over the puncture. The ship was still operational, but the psychological damage was done. The invincible shield of the advanced air defense system had been pierced. The captain stood on the bridge wing. He watched the foreign coast through his binoculars. The morning is over. We survived the 60 seconds. Now we have to survive the aftermath. 8:30 in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The sky over the ocean was now a brilliant and cloudless blue. The mist had evaporated, leaving the water looking like a sheet of polished sapphire. On the surface, the USS Carney was moving slowly to the east. It was putting distance between itself and the Iranian coastline. The ship was no longer at general quarters, but the crew remained on high alert. The black smoke from the stacks had thinned, but the smell of burnt electrical components still hung in the air of the passageways. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical action officer sat at his station. He was not looking for new targets. He was looking at the data from the past hour. The recording of the kinetic impact was being looped on a secondary monitor. The officer spoke to the captain. "Sir, we have analyzed the telemetry from the moment of impact. The object was not just fast, it was maneuvering. In the last 2 seconds of flight, it made a 3G correction to stay on target. That is why the interceptors missed. The guidance system is more advanced than we predicted." The captain looked at the screen. It was a sniper shot from 200 miles away. They did not just want to hit us. They wanted to prove they could hit a specific coordinate on the deck. They chose the forward gun mount area because it was the furthest point from the bridge. It was a demonstration. "Sir, it was an execution that failed to pull the trigger." The captain turned to the internal radio. "Status of the hull patch." The damage control chief responded immediately. "The patch is secure. Sir, we have stopped the secondary seepage. We are beginning a full sensor sweep of the adjacent compartments to ensure no microfractures in the main longitudinal beam." 300 miles away, in a secure bunker in Tehran, the Iranian commander from Bandar-e-Jashk was no longer in his mobile van. He stood in a room filled with senior officers. The air was cold. The walls were lined with maps of the region. He was not being treated as a hero. A general spoke. His voice was a low growl. "You were ordered to conduct a test, not to puncture an American destroyer. You have given them the one thing they did not have: physical proof of our terminal guidance capabilities." The commander stood at attention. "The guidance system malfunctioned, sir. The flat trajectory caused the seeker to lock on to the largest radar return. I moved to de-escalate. As soon as the impact was confirmed, the general walked to the window. The Americans are not retaliating. For now, their fighters have returned to the carrier. But their satellites are repositioning over every one of our launch sites. You have shown our hand." Before the game has truly begun, the commander felt a drop of sweat run down his spine. They know we can hit them. "General, that is a deterrent. It is only a deterrent if they believe we will use it. Now, they will spend billions of dollars to find a way to jam that specific seeker. You have traded a strategic advantage for a tactical scare." Back on the Carney, the captain walked out onto the bridge wing. He looked down at the forward deck. A group of sailors was finishing the weld. On the steel plate, the orange sparks flew into the wind. It looked like a small, industrial scar on a perfect gray skin. It looked like a small, industrial scar on a perfect gray skin. The radio on his belt chirped. It was the admiral from the carrier strike group. "Carney, this is 7. We have received your data package. High Command is reviewing the physics of that impact. They want you to proceed to Fujairah for a full technical inspection. We are sending 2 destroyers to escort you." The captain keyed the mic. "Copy. 7. We are on our way. Any word on the diplomatic front? The Iranians are claiming a technical malfunction. We are officially accepting that explanation to avoid further escalation, but off the record. Every ship in the Fifth Fleet is being issued new engagement protocols. The era of the high-altitude intercept is over. We are now playing in the wave-tops. The captain looked at the horizon. The Iranian coast was a thin, brown line in the distance. He knew that both sides were currently telling the world that nothing had happened. A test, a mistake, a minor incident. But he felt the weight of the hole in his ship. The morning had changed the rules of the ocean. 9:15 in the morning, 3 days after the incident. The Pentagon, Washington District of Columbia. The briefing room was windowless and silent. A dozen high-ranking officers and civilian analysts sat around a mahogany table. On the wall, a massive screen showed a high-speed reconstruction of the flight path. The red line did not arc. It stayed flat. It was a jagged, horizontal strike that defied 40 years of naval doctrine. A technical analyst stood by the screen. "We have finished the autopsy of the sensor data from the Carney. The weapon was a modified Fateh 313. It used a cold gas thruster system to maintain its pitch at extreme speeds. By staying below 50 meters, it stayed inside the radar clutter of the sea state. Our interceptors were looking for a ballistic target. They were not looking for a sea skimmer moving at Mach 7. A general leaned back in his chair. "And the impact. Tell me about the hole in the deck." The analyst switched the slide. A high-resolution photo showed the 10-centimeter circle in the steel. It is a kinetic kill. No explosives. The sheer speed of the slug created a plasma pocket around the airframe. It did not just hit the ship. It punched through it using the energy of its own motion. If that slug had been 5 centimeters to the left, it would have severed the main power bus for the forward radar. The Carney would have been blind and dead in the water. The general looked at the photo for a long time. The Iranians sent us a message. They did not want to sink a ship. They wanted to show us that they could. They gave us 60 seconds of terror to prove that our shield has a crack in it. 1,000 miles away, the USS Carney sat at a pier in the port of Fujairah. The morning sun was hot. The air smelled of salt and diesel. A heavy crane was lifting a new section of armored plating onto the forward deck. The sound of grinding metal echoed across the water. The captain stood on the pier. He was not wearing his formal uniform. He wore working khakis. He watched the welders as they began to seal the scar. He was thinking about the 60 seconds. He was thinking about the moment he almost ordered a retaliatory strike that would have set the entire region on fire. The tactical action officer walked up beside him. "The crew is doing well, sir. We have a team from the Office of Naval Intelligence on board. They are taking samples of the metal around the puncture." The captain nodded. "They are looking for the future. That hole is the most valuable piece of intelligence we have gathered in a decade. We now know exactly what their seeker looks for. We know how it maneuvers in the terminal phase. Do you think they intended to hit us, sir?" The captain looked out toward the mouth of the Persian Gulf. "It does not matter if it was a mistake or a miracle of guidance. The result is the same. The ocean is smaller today than it was last week. The distance between a test and a war is now measured in seconds, not miles." In Tehran, the official report on the incident was filed in a vault that did not exist on any map. It was labeled as a successful demonstration of the flatline trajectory. There were no medals. There was no public announcement. Both sides had looked into the abyss and chosen to step back. It was a professional understanding between rivals. The final assessment from the Pentagon was clear. The Carney had survived because of the restraint of its commander and the precision of its gunners. But the next ship might not be so lucky. The age of the high-altitude shield was over. The era of the sea-skimming hypersonic threat had arrived. The morning was still quiet in the Gulf. The water was calm. The sun climbed higher into the deep blue sky. No missiles flew. No ships were lost. But history had shifted in the space of 1 minute. Modern warfare is decided not by who fires first, but by who chooses not to fire at all. The Carney was repaired, the crew was ready, but they all knew the truth. The flatline was still out there, waiting for the next 60 seconds.